Welcome back to Grounded. I'm with Mindfulness, Meditation, Self-Exploration. Now, I've kind of had a video or an urge to do a video on a particular topic for a while now. So as soon as I've got a little bit of time, I'm going to reel it off. So this video today is about unconscious relationships which lead to sex versus a conscious relationship which leads to love. Now, humanity has very, very, very little understanding between these two. In fact, the conscious relationship doesn't even exist for the majority of the world's population. Most of us are functioning through an unconscious relationship. So I want to start off with the basis of all relationships. Now, most of us feel like a relationship starts on an attraction level, and it kind of does to some degree. But behind the attraction, there is an energetic attraction. So in an unconscious relationship, there is a pulling towards the other, which actually reflects back our relationships that we had with our parents. So your adult relationships, you will attract people that reflect back the relationship bond you created between your mother, your father, or both. So when we attract an unconscious relationship, we are getting a mirror of what is unconscious in ourselves, so what we're not aware of. So when we draw in a partner, that partner will mirror back the parts of us that we are unaware of. And the parts of us that we are unaware of are the parts of us that we suppressed or we created in our childhood. So your adult relationships reflect back the unhealed aspects of your relationship with your parent. Now here's how that pans out in your current relationship. Now, for instance, if you felt rejected in your childhood, then you will draw in a partner that makes you feel rejected. If you, and this is like a classic, typical thing that you see with adults always palming their children off. And I've done it before, where you lie to your children just to get them off a particular subject. You'll either put it as a future event, it's something I'll do for you, and then you don't follow through. That seems like a thing that all adults do, but it's very destructive to a child, because a child then believes that the parent lies, and then if they believe that the parent's lying, then they can come up with the idea of not being able to trust. And so all of these aspects that we create in our childhood that become suppressed, or we become so aligned with them we can't see them. Whenever we're talking about our shadow side, we're talking about the unconscious in us. And the unconscious is what we're not aware of. We act out many programs that we're not truly aware of because they're unconscious to us. And so when we're having an adult relationship, the partner that we attract comes into our lives to reflect back our unconscious aspects, our painful aspects. Now, in an unconscious relationship, we're looking for the other person to fulfill us. We're looking for the other person to make us feel more wanted, make us feel more loved, make us feel more connected. So in an unconscious relationship, we are looking to fill the voids within. We're looking for somebody to cater for our own emotional pain, our own emotional discomfort, our own emotional beliefs. So when we're having an unconscious relationship, we're basically looking at the other person to fulfill us. Now, obviously, because the other person reflects back what is unconscious, which is the root of all arguments. Whenever there's an argument in the relationship, the other is triggering the unconscious in you. That emotional response you feel, that negative response you feel, is the unconscious. It is you're holding on to your past trauma, your past experiences, your past believing in not being good enough, your past believing in rejection. And so your partner's showing this to you because they are mirroring them parts. Now, what do we do in an unconscious relationship? When we begin to feel our own pain, which is being created by our partner. Now, I want you to listen to this because this is very important. When you are being triggered by your partner, instead of facing that pain, instead of becoming conscious of it, instead of beginning to shift yourself from it, what do? We hold on to the other person. Whenever the other person makes the other partner feel pain, the partner will automatically begin to hold on to that person. And as you begin to hold on to the person, this is what creates tension in a relationship. This is what creates the control dynamics. And because we are unable to face ourselves, we cling and we hold on to the other person. So the partner, then the relationship then begins to move into a dynamic of control. And control is power over another. And how do we control the most? Well, we express that pain, because behind control is pain, is your own pain. That pain is then expressed sexually. So sexual excitation, which is to control, is a passing over. So sex then becomes an outlet for that frustration, for that pain. And then that results in sex being a very rough act, a very controlling act, a very forceful act. It almost becomes a violent act. And the reason for that is because behind that lust, what people refer to as lust, is emotional pain. And this is what's rife on the planet. If you ever, everybody's indulging in sex videos now. If you look online at the kind of graphic content that's out there, it's very violent. And how many people does this appeal to? And that's given you a little bit of a grasp on the reality in which we live in. It's a very brutal, violent, unhappy civilization. And that is reflected in the nature of sex, which is to control, which is to dominate the other, because we're not strong enough. We don't have enough conscious power to dominate ourselves, to take control over ourselves. So that's an unconscious relationship. A conscious relationship is two people understanding when they're coming together that this person is going to bring up trauma in me. And when that trauma arises, not to put that trauma onto the other person, but for you both to be in a conscious agreement that you're facing yourselves through each other. Now, a conscious relationship is dissolving this emotional pain of accumulated past, the beliefs that come to the surface. It's about two people going through the healing process together. Now, as you move through your emotional pain, you are able to feel on a much greater, deeper level. Love is such a subtle thing. Awakening is such a subtle thing, but yet so powerful. So you have to become more subtle in yourself to be able to truly feel love and divine connection. And what keeps you out of that subtleness is your emotion. So as two people coming together in a conscious relationship begin to dissolve their emotion, they become much more conscious of the subtleness of love. That is transferred into sex as that conscious ground being truly realized and amplified. So the difference between sex and making love is that when you're making love, you are conscious enough to realize the subtleness, and the more subtle you are, the deeper the pleasure. Because when you're in emotion, you need stimulation, you need force. It needs to be rough, it needs to be coarse, because that's the nature of emotion. But as emotion begins to dissolve, the subtleness of love is there. And the subtleness of love, when that transfers over to sex, is much more pleasure, because you're able to feel the subtleness of what true love is. And that, for a man, is represented in his ability to feel the female's womb, to feel the female's vagina. And I mean truly, consciously be aware of, because the womb represents life. It's where all of life comes from. And that's what man endeavours to seek. If only he could realise that what he loves most is the female energy, is the womb where life comes out of. That's what man truly seeks, but he's not subtle enough to be able to perceive it, because he's too coarse in emotion. So a conscious relationship is one where two people are dissolving emotion, which is that personal sense of self, realizing God more and more within. And then that connection through love is a much more purifying, much more sensational act, because you're connecting on a conscious level. It's life connecting with life. It's life realizing life. It's life realizing more of its essence. And it makes making love deeply pleasurable. You're not doing it to fulfill your excitement. You're not doing it to dominate. You're not doing it to control. You're not doing it to have and act out your sexual fantasy. You are becoming more conscious. You are becoming more deeply aware through each other. And then sex doesn't become satisfying, it becomes fulfilling. You're not satisfying an urge. Sex becomes fulfilling, because the woman also knows that the man is there in love, and the man knows that the woman is there in love. It's a reality and a realization that this world isn't able to currently realize. But I aim to speak more on relationships, to speak more on sex, to speak more on love, to speak more on consciousness. Once you begin to make love and to realize what sex and making love is truly about, then the old way of sexual excitement, which is a selfish act, begins to fade. And it's at that point where both Godheads of the male and the female are able to be recognized in making love. To the next one. Much love.